Hey, Collective, I hope you are enjoying this wonderful wintry weather day. I know that I'm not the only one who wishes that we're actually having church in person together because your week doesn't feel the same without Collective. I feel that as well, but I'm so thankful for technology and the ability to still be connected with you all. On Saturday, we actually had a small team of people come here to the building to give up their Saturday night to record this so that we could worship together. And so before we get into any sort of teaching for today, I just want to shout out our band and tech team for being here, and I'd love for you to do that as well. Put it in the comments, write your favorite band member and tech member, really get to them on that one. But make sure to give them a huge shout out today online or even Sunday next week because they were just so willing to figure out how to make this work so that we wouldn't have a Sunday without church and without the opportunity to be together. Okay, if you're posting things, that's enough. Their ego's already a little bit big, so you don't need them to get too much bigger than that. So when I was really young, probably kindergarten age or so, my favorite candy was regular M&Ms. Now today, peanut M&Ms are my favorite. I think they're the GOAT. My palate has matured, so I don't just want the plain ones anymore. But when I was a kid, it was all about chocolate M&Ms. And every time I would get a pack of regular M&Ms, what I would do is I'd get home from the store with my mom, and I would go to the coffee table, I would open them up, and I would dump them out on the table, and then I would organize them all by color. All the greens in one pile, all the oranges in another. If you're old, all the tan ones, right, the light brown ones in one pile. Do you all remember having those? If you do, how's your back this morning after you shoveled snow? Because it means you're old. Okay, it was actually 1995, so for those of you who are young and you don't remember this, in 1995, they actually did like a nationwide poll to vote on the new M&M. They chose blue. It was a great choice, but tan disappeared. So ultimately, if you had the internet growing up, you've never seen a tan M&M before, RIP, they were the GOAT. They were great. But once I would get all my M&Ms organized, I would eat them, starting with the ones that tasted the worst, moving my way up to the ones that tasted the best. And I know that some of you know what I'm talking about, I hope. So I'd eat the yellow ones first because they're not the best tasting M&Ms. And I worked my way up, right? Tan, because I'm old, orange, brown, red, and I would finish with green because green was the best tasting M&M until blue came out, which that's what I would eat today if I did that. Just to be clear, I do not do that anymore. But if I did, I would finish with blue. Now here's why I tell you this story, even though it makes me seem just a little bit crazy. Even as a young kid, I loved structure and organization. I loved order, I loved rules, I loved systems. And this is still true about me today. I love consistency. I love rhythms and patterns. I love predictability, which is why I hate snow days as an adult. Like, I just absolutely hate them. And I hate them because I do not like when my life is disrupted. I'm not a big fan of change, especially when it's last-minute change. I do not like when my plans don't come together. Right, when I'm driving home and there's a detour, I don't want to drive a different way home. I want to drive the same way home every single day. When there's a snow day and we have to figure out what we're going to do for church, I will hold off as long as I can to make a decision because I just want to have a normal Sunday. I do not like interruption, and I know that many of you feel the same way. But here's the thing about interruption. Sometimes interruption can be a good thing. Right? And I'm talking about small interruption like snow days, canceled meetings, sports getting rained out, your car not starting, the unexpected phone call. But I'm also talking about those bigger, more painful interruptions like losing a job, the passing of someone you love, finding out that you're pregnant, getting cut from the team. Because sometimes it takes our life getting interrupted for us to step back and to get perspective on the way that we are living and recognize that something needs to change. That something needs to change because our mental health is actually getting worse. That something needs to change because the faith that we thought was strong, we're actually struggling with. That something needs to change because we're making decisions that are unhealthy. Sometimes it takes interruption to allow us to see how worn out we are, because it is in that interruption that we are finally able to take a deep breath. Sometimes it takes the interruption of caring for a sick kid or a sick parent to help us realize that we aren't spending enough time with the people that we say we love. Sometimes it takes interruption in a dating relationship to help us see that the person that we are with is not the person that we want to be with long term. Sometimes it takes interruption in our marriage for us to realize that we're just coasting, that we're not investing in our relationships anymore. Sometimes it takes interruption to help us end a friendship that is toxic, or to realize that we put our purpose in our career and that's left us feeling empty, or to get perspective on the wounds that we are carrying. And as much as we don't like interruptions, sometimes it can be a good thing. And so that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Instead of continuing in our series called First Thing First, which we'll pick up next week, we're going to allow ourselves today to be interrupted by this storm. Right? Instead of us pretending like you are right here, right now, instead of at your home, under a blanket, holding on to some hot chocolate, your kids are outside screaming, let's lean into the reality of our life right now and the interruption. And so to do that, we're going to read a story that comes from Luke 10 in the New Testament, or the second half of the Bible. It starts in verse 38, and it says this. It says, as Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And so one day, Jesus is kind of walking along. He's traveling from town to town, and he ends up in Martha's neighborhood. And so she invites him over for dinner. And just for some additional context here, Martha lives with her sister, whose name is Mary. And both Mary and Martha, they are good friends with Jesus because they have a brother named Lazarus, who is one of Jesus' boys. In fact, a few days earlier, Lazarus had died, and Jesus had raised him from the dead. And so they are tight. But you can just imagine how important this dinner is going to be for Mary and Martha. Because Jesus isn't just some guy. Right? They know that he is the Son of God. They know that he's the Savior of the world. They had just seen him raise his brother from the dead. And so now he's coming over to their house for dinner. Verse 39 says this, her sister, Mary, sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught, but Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. And so while Jesus is hanging out in the living room, right, he's talking about God, he's talking about the kingdom of heaven, all these incredible things, Mary's just chilling. But Martha is stressing out, and she's frantically trying to do everything she can to make sure that dinner is ready on time. And we know what this is like. On Friday, my wife Ray and I, we had some friends over for dinner, and they are not the saviors of the world, but they are important people to us. And so when we got home from work that day, what did we do? We began sprinting around our house trying to get it cleaned up and organized before they arrived. Right? Our kids cleaned the playroom, crying the entire time because they hated it, but they cleaned the playroom. We ran our Roomba. We put the clothes away that we folded last week that we forgot to put away during the week because we were just too busy. And we did all this because we wanted to be good hosts. Right? And that's how Martha feels. She's not doing anything wrong. She's trying to have a good dinner with a person that she cares deeply about. But the thing is, it bothers her that her sister isn't helping. The story continues. It says, she came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits there while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. Now, I don't know who the older sister is in this story, but it's Martha, right? Like, this is such like an older sibling move, right? It's like, I'm doing everything, and all they're doing is sitting there, not helping at all. And I'm sure, while reading this, some of you who are older siblings, you're thinking, well, why isn't Mary helping? But I also recognize that some of you are younger siblings, and you're sitting there going, I wonder what Mary was wearing, right? Middle children, we forgot all about you. Don't worry about it. But in this story, right, Martha is busy. Martha has things that she needs to get done. Martha cannot be interrupted, even though Jesus is in her home. But Mary has dropped everything to sit at Jesus' feet, to be in his presence, to just listen. And so Martha goes to Jesus and she says, I need you to tell my sister to come help me. I need you to tell my sister that we do not have time to sit at your feet right now. I need you to tell my sister that we cannot be interrupted because we have a dinner that needs to be made. Verse 41, but the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details, but there is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken from her. And so Jesus says to Martha, and I imagine it's this like deeply caring moment, right? Not a reprimand, but a pastoral moment. And he says, stop letting the little things get in the way of what matters the most. The fact that I'm standing right in front of you. He says, Martha, let yourself be interrupted. The dinner can wait. The dishes can wait. Just come and sit with me and learn from me and be in my presence. You see, Mary allowed herself to be interrupted. And Jesus said that in her interruption, she found the thing that she should be most concerned about, which is her relationship with him. But Martha, in her busyness, was missing out on the fact that Jesus was right in front of her. She was too busy focusing on the details, as Jesus puts it, and because of that, she's missing out on being in his presence. And so let me ask you right now, as a person whose life is being interrupted, who in this story do you resonate the most with? Is it Martha or is it Mary? And if you are more like Martha, why does interruption bother you so much? I know for me, the reason I hate interruption is because I had a very chaotic childhood. There was no consistency in my life. Right? Every day felt different. And because of this, right, I carry that wound with me, and I fight for stability right now. Right? I try to create a life that has consistency and predictability and no surprises, because I hate them, without interruption. And so let me ask you again, why does interruption bother us so much? Maybe it's past wounds. Maybe it's current fears. Maybe it's because you put unhealthy expectations on yourself, probably because you are the oldest sibling. Right? You carry this pressure that you think exists in the world that really doesn't exist. Maybe it's because your life is so packed. Right? There's so much going on that if interruption were to happen, it would create this ripple effect in your life that you can't come back from. Maybe it's something else. But in this story, Jesus tells Martha that it's okay to be interrupted. In fact, it's a good thing. And so here's our one application for this morning. Right? For those of you who are at home taking notes, good job. Write this down, right? Allow yourself to be interruptible. Right? Allow this to be an actual part of your life. Right? Don't let the wounds take over. Don't let the scars take over. Don't let the fear take over. Allow yourself to be interruptible. In the busyness of work and raising children and school and sports and your social life and hobbies and dating, whatever it is, allow yourself to be interruptible, because it's often in the interruption that we experience Jesus the most. It's often in the interruption when we feel his presence the most, when we feel his comfort the most, when we feel his community called the church the most. It's often when we feel his power and his strength and his grace and his providence the most. You have to allow yourself to be interruptible. Jesus, in the best way, wants to interrupt your life. Honestly, it's what he came for. In fact, I don't think it's possible for anyone to put their faith in Jesus and to start trusting him without him interrupting something. Right? Without him interrupting the decisions that you're making, without him interrupting how you view yourself, without him interrupting what you value and what you prioritize, without him interrupting how you approach your relationships or your career or your hobbies, without him interrupting what you are building your life on. Because when you start following Jesus, the way that you are living and the way Jesus wants you to live will collide, and it will create an interruption. And oftentimes, honestly, in that interruption, there's chaos, and there's pain, and there's disappointment, and there's frustration. But what really happens is a line is created. Right? There's this line in the sand moment where you have to decide if you want to allow Jesus to keep interrupting the things in your life, or if you want to stay busy and distracted by the details. And if you allow Jesus to interrupt you, it will give you the opportunity to come face to face with your sin, to come face to face with your fears, to come face to face with your doubts and your wounds and your purpose and your hope and your joy. And through Jesus, and really through interruption, you will begin to live a different life, which is the life that he's actually created you for. But really, that is only possible if we are interruptible. And so for some of you right now, Jesus is trying to step into the middle of your life and create an interruption for you that is for the better. Please don't be too busy to let him in. Please don't be so focused on the details that you miss a chance to experience his presence. Please don't stop Jesus from interrupting your life and all that he can bring. For the grace that he can bring, for the forgiveness that he can bring, for the new life that he can bring, for the healing that he can bring. If you are not a follower of Jesus, maybe this snowstorm is the interruption you need to finally wrestle with the question in peace of, what am I building my foundation on? Because for the past few weeks, you've left church and you've just been busy again. But now the world is giving you time. Maybe now is the time to start wrestling with that question of, what is stopping me from just sitting at his feet so I can learn from him? What is holding me back from finally putting my faith in him and getting baptized? Why won't I let him interrupt my life? Like, what am I holding on to? Now, for everybody else who struggles with this the way that I do, allow this interruption today to give you a new perspective. Allow the interruption to bring change in your life. Allow the interruption to give you quality time with your family that your work doesn't allow you to have. Allow this interruption to give you rest. Allow the interruption to have some fun. Go outside and play like a kid because it takes 10 years before we get this much snow again. Go have fun. Allow the interruption to step outside and to see how beautiful it is instead of talking about how dangerous it is or how scary it is or how devastating this next week's going to be, so you can be reminded of just how big God is. Allow the interruption to help you feel the strength of the community that you're in, because even though we're apart and we're spread out all over the place, how good does this community feel right now? Allow the interruption to give you an extra moment to spend time with God that's different than what you're used to. Allow yourself to be interruptible so something in your life could change. You know, whenever somebody is ready to get baptized at Collective, one of our leaders will call them, and we always talk to them about where they're at with Jesus and what they're wrestling with, and then we'll ask them to share their story. And a few years ago, I was actually on a call with a guy who had just started coming to Collective, and he had not gone to church for a really long time. It was kind of something he grew up in, but when he was a teenager, his parents gave him a choice, and he chose to walk away. And when I asked him why he decided to Google churches around me and then show up at Collective, he said it was because he recently had a moment when he realized that his life was going in a direction that was leading him toward burnout and loneliness and just destruction. After grinding through college, he got what he believed was his dream job. Everything he ever wanted it to be, he began to dedicate his whole life to it. And this dominated everything. It dominated his dating life, his social life, his free time. But he wasn't really upset about it because this is what he wanted. And then COVID hit, and he lost his job. And he told me that during this time, his whole world came crashing down around him, and at his lowest point, he decided to pray, something he hadn't done in years, and he asked God to do something. Right? It's that prayer we just say, just show up and do anything. Like, I just need to feel something in my life right now. And while praying, he said he felt God telling him that he was going to be okay. He just needed to trust him. And it was in that moment that he realized that he has been putting all of his hope and his faith and his peace in his new job, which had failed him. And so he had to try something new. And so he Googled churches and ended up at Collective. After being here for a few months, he checked the baptism box because he was ready to proclaim Jesus as Lord and Savior, his leader and his forgiver. And a few years ago, if you would have told this guy that he was going to lose his job and have to start over, he would have been absolutely devastated. In fact, I think he just would have kind of pushed you away if you warned him of that. But today, he will tell you that losing his job was the interruption that his life needed so he could start over and recalibrate the direction that his life was heading in. And so I don't know what today's interruption will bring you. I don't know what tomorrow's interruption will bring you. Hopefully, it's like 5 days of disruption for us. But I encourage you to lean in and to not be so distracted by the details that you miss out on the only thing that's actually worth being concerned about, which is your relationship with Jesus. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the gift of interruption. God, for the opportunity that we have to take a pause. God, the opportunity that we have to kind of take a moment to step back. God, the opportunity that we have to spend time as a family or to spend time with our friends, to spend time with our kids. God, the opportunity we have right now to not open up our laptop on Monday morning and just have a snow day. And God, I pray that in this interruption that we feel your presence. God, I pray that you use this interruption to help us get back on the right track or to change the trajectory of our life. God, I pray that you help us not be so bogged down by the busyness and the details that we miss out on what you have for us. God, we're thankful that in this story of Mary and Martha, you encourage both of them. God, you commend Mary for stopping and pausing, but you encourage Martha to do the same. And so, God, I know our church is full of people who feel on both sides of that. God, just give us a time this week to take a pause, to take a deep breath, more than anything to focus on you. God, we thank you for the opportunity to be together this morning. God, we thank you for interruption. We love you and pray these things in your name. Amen.